everything's fine because there's merch in the store. Yeah, merch in the store. We're all stuck inside and we miss the outdoors. Wait, don't think about that. Stop thinking about that. I mean, what? I miss human touch. Merch in the store, new merch in the store.
Okay, I'm gonna do my best to make this clear right from the start. I have always and will do my best to continue to approach this situation, should it continue, mind you, from an unbiased point of view. I have no ties with Pyro. I have no ties with Turkey Tom or Augie or Diesel Patches or anyone who has talked about the video so far. I have made it clear as well in other videos, and I will say it now, that I present to you what I present to you, not as cold hard fact, not as a set in stone judgment. This is all potential evidence. That I wouldn't get too emotional. And as hard as I know that will be, we're going to do our best to give a measured response. I would also like to say that I'm not some kind of psyop. I'm not someone who's in on some kind of group trying to cancel anybody. I really just want to uplift both viewpoints. The worst thing you can do is have only one side of information shoved in your face and be told to form your opinion off that. People should have the right to choose, no matter what it is. Now, I need to make this clear. I present everything here not as fact, but as potential evidence that has been brought to the table. It is up to you as the audience to make a decision for yourself. I will not tell you what to believe or what to do. You need to make these choices for yourself and take action as you see fit. Evidence being presented from one side or the other that is meant for you, the audience, to look at and interpret for your own. Inasmuch that I occasionally sprinkle an opinion here and there, I do not mean it to dictate your school of thought. At the end of the day, my goal in covering the situation as a whole has always been for you to come to me as a source of information. With, yes, my opinion dropped in there every now and again, but at the end of the day, my goal is to not steer you one way or the other. It is to provide coverage. My opinion is secondary, and if I've ever presented it or said something that contradicts that in any way, I apologize, and I hope that I can do you all better in the future. If hearing all that, you still believe that I'm in the wrong, or that this video isn't for you, by all means, go right ahead. I will not stop you, because I can't stop you. But what I will do here is provide as balanced of an analysis as I can. Welcome back to the channel, new and returning, young and old, fans and haters alike of Pyro. If you're new here, why not subscribe? It's free, just takes a second, and you can always undo it, but it does help out the channel a lot, so thank you. Let's not mince words. Pyro has released a response to the Turkey Tom document that I covered in the previous video, and all we're going to do is take a look at it together, drop some thoughts here and there, and then walk away with it with whatever we're thinking. So without further ado, let's get right into it.
I'm going to use this video to address the allegations made against me. Recently, to those who are unaware, I've been accused of grooming a 15-year-old boy when I was 19. That I'm some kind of predator and was aware of his age all along. This is categorically untrue and a complete lie. I originally made a response on my subreddit, and I truly believed the evidence I provided was enough. And for a time it was. But a few days ago, a poorly written Google Doc has surfaced claiming that I have lied in my response and I'm 100% guilty. I just want to be clear, I have never lied at any point. This document is disingenuous, manipulative, and it fails to include so much of my original statement, bringing new information to light, but also making points to prove my guilt that I already proven to be untrue in my first statement.
So, right off the bat, for as much as I chastised him for potentially going to Reddit to dodge things, he proved it wrong. He made a video, and he took whatever time was necessary to be able to do that, and that's good on him. It does feel like this video should have been made from the start, in a way. It feels like it very well could have settled some of the hassle of splitting a response between two platforms, but he does make a good point. He felt that it was enough as it could be, and he's a busy guy, so it makes sense that it would take him a minute to make a video.
It's managed to fool so many people. Like, I see video after video of people now saying that I'm a liar.
And he claims here that Pyro could have actually been lying in his response here.
They already kind of have this notion that he did it, and he's not responding, so it looks pretty guilty on his part to a lot of people too.
Now, this is the main part of the Google Doc that really set me off. I believe this piece of evidence is enough to say Pyro is in the wrong.
Whether Pyro does respond to everything, or just pulls a mini-lad and ignores it for as long as he can, is still up in the air.
I'm inclined to agree with him on this point. People should never have jumped immediately on chastising Pyro one way or the other based on whatever evidence was hot at the time. They should have never taken it as firm. They should have always done what we try to do here. Take it as potential pieces to a puzzle. The best way to approach this topic is to present that evidence to the audience and allow people to think what they will. No one should have ever approached it as Pyrocynical is damned this way or damned the other. There was definitely a degree of patience that was lacking in the community.
For those who haven't read the entirety of my original response, let me give a little background. When I was 19 and 20, I liked to take part in this degenerate furry roleplay with pretty much anyone that would reciprocate. And looking back on it now, the word cringe, that doesn't near do enough justice to how sad this all was. These conversations never led to any nudes being exchanged. It was just purely fantasy garbage, something which Ivory himself confirms.
Did he ever ask you for nudes?
No.
No.
What these people look like, their gender, these weren't variables. Like, I could have been doing this with a 90-year-old cave troll and it wouldn't have made a difference. It was roleplay after all. You're just pretending. Now it turns out my accuser, Ivory, one of the people that I've had these conversations with, was 15. That is 3 to 4 years younger than I was. It was entirely my responsibility to verify his age before having these conversations. And the fact that I didn't, that is so incredibly negligent of me to do so. I may have been young myself, but still old enough to know better. But let me be very clear. I had absolutely no idea that he was 15. I absolutely did not lie in my original Reddit post, and I would like to emphasize that.
Pyro states that no nudes were ever exchanged in any of these roleplays, not solely with Ivory, and it's good that he accepts responsibility for being negligent, but it's worrying to think that there was a moment where he didn't choose to ask, or he didn't think to ask. You know, pretending or not, there is always another person on the other side of the screen.
My God. He's provided a lot of proof like this to show how much of a degenerate I was, and I mean, I agree, you know. You got me. Now, the whole world pretty much knows what I jerk off to, but what he and no one else has done is come close to substantiating how this constitutes as grooming. Ivory himself even struggles to explain how what I did was grooming.
How were you groomed? Because you don't need to be groomed for this to be wrong. I mean, is it really fair that you use the word grooming? And if that's true, if you feel that's true, where was this going?
I'm not like, I don't know. I was in a call with my friend when I like typed it out, and I typed like, I remember I typed that and asked like, is that okay?
Because it reads more like a YouTube like thumbnail. Do you honestly believe? Did you not understand the definition of the word?
I feel like it was like forcing or like manipulating a child into a like sexual situation.
Okay.
Yeah,
right.
that's what that word means to me.
To disprove this, I'd actually have to see something to disprove, but there's literally nothing. It's a blanket statement of Pyrocynical groomed me.
In my opinion, the core argument that Pyro is trying to articulate here is valid. It was a poorly worded claim, and it should not have been laid down as a blanket claim of grooming. However, despite any missteps on Ivory's part, there's still uncertainty here. Ivory could have definitely saved some face by saying that Pyro was explicitly inappropriate with him, and I sort of believe that's what the claims have evolved to at this point. Ignoring the people who do decry Pyro as a groomer and all that, it feels like the large amount of people that still voice their concerns are more concerned over the idea of Pyro behaving this way to multiple people who could have also potentially been minors, you know, with or without his knowledge. And again, we don't know if the other people which he claims that he interacted with in this way, were minors or not. We aren't firmly able to say that at the immediate moment. Again, it's good that he takes responsibility, but it feels like there's still questions. Questions that he may only know the answer to.
Ivory himself even said he did not get any sexual tones from this.
When he invited you, was there any kind of indication that it was sort of a date in any way? That there would be a wink-wink, date-like act with sexual interaction? Did he give you that idea at all?
He didn't, like, if he was, I didn't pick up on it.
I mean, yeah, we shared some fat furry art, we had some weird fantasy roleplay, but there was no sexual interest. There were no nudes exchanged. His name, his appearance, it wasn't important to me. I didn't even know what he looked like at this point. I mean, if he linked me a picture or something, I would have forgotten it because it was just that irrelevant to me. But I'm going to jump right ahead anyway and invite him to come over just for sex. Okay.
Now, personally, I don't think irrelevant or irrelevance is a good attitude to have towards people that you potentially roleplay with. But that's just my take, and it's neither here nor there. This is about how Pyro chose to conduct himself.
So if I'm so sure that I didn't know he was 15, how would I have missed this? This is something I said in my original Reddit statement. He never once disclosed the fact that he was 15 at the time these exchanges commenced. He didn't include his age in his bio until he was 16, but I was not on Twitter between the 28th of December 2016 until the 29th of June 2017, as I was suspended. It would have been a hell of a lot less likely for me to see all but one of these tweets that's been used as evidence in this Google Doc. My Reddit post clearly shows that I was suspended from Twitter at the time that they were made. And that of course leaves the very last one, but like, what are the chances of you catching one specific tweet when you follow hundreds of people? I brought this up in my Reddit post as well, but it's been deliberately left out as some like shit attempt at manipulation. Now the claim is, because he linked his Twitter, which had his age in his bio, I now retroactively know that when this message or that message was sent, I knew he was 15. What? When Ivory linked me his Twitter profile, the age in bio says 16. This is something I acknowledged in my Reddit post, but to be fair, I probably didn't elaborate enough on it. In retrospect, I never should have continued the furry stuff with him once I learnt of his age, even though at the time I didn't see it as a problem. Legally, age of consent is 16 in both my country and his state. I didn't consider the age gap significant enough because what we were talking about and doing was so far removed from actual sex. It literally was just fantasy furry garbage because I didn't consider Ivory sexual in any way in person. I never had a plan to progress our friendship into something more, and I never considered it an issue. I understand though that, you know, this is going to be one of those weird grey areas where people are going to agree or disagree. I think it's a combination of all of these variables coming together, which led me to believe at the time there was nothing wrong from a moral standpoint. As for the other message, I don't remember seeing this message, and I'm not sure why it's being used as proof that I knew he was 15, because if you compare the dates, this message was sent 2 months after he sent me his link with his age in bio.
Once again, Pyro brings up an interesting point. This will be a gray area. If you're looking for my take, it feels negligent to have continued, despite age of consent and all that. It feels like the moment that Pyro found out, he should have backed down. However, I can understand why he felt safe going forward, and I'm assuming that this feeling of safety was strengthened by his claim that there was no raw sexual intent. And whether or not you view the roleplay as carrying direct sexual intent or not, it was still sexual in nature, and that is concerning when it's being sent to a minor, no matter the age of consent.
Pyrocynical, who at the time was expressing interest in Ivory and being in a relationship with him at the time, which was corroborated by Pyrocynical's at the time soon-to-be girlfriend, still never knew Ivory's age. An age with Ida clearly acknowledged, and an age which she thought would not dissuade him from being in a relationship with Ivory. Somehow Ivory never mentioned his age, and no one else mentioned his age in the presence of Pyrocynical outside of all these clear instances, even once. So here they're trying to make it seem impossible I wouldn't have known his age, or had to do some kind of like insane mental gymnastics to never find out. But if you look at the DMs Ivory provided himself for this document, you can see that he's confiding with Ida about age being a problem. Keep in mind as well, I was not in a relationship with Ida until about mid-2019. This document claims it as soon to be, but like, it's a whole 2 years before we actually start dating, and 2 whole years before this conversation took place. I mean, we both talked before, but we weren't close. She had no reason to confide with me with someone else's private information. So back when Ivory opened up to Ida about something private, there is no guarantee that she would have came and told me, despite the fact that this document and videos based off this document claim it as concrete, irrefutable proof. Why would Ida think to tell me about a random conversation that she had with someone over 2 years ago? The messages from Ivory regarding a relationship were completely one-sided. If it helps for context, because we're being so open here, I'm straight, IRL, like I have no interest in guys. This is just purely like a weird fantasy, and it does not carry over into the real world whatsoever. But one thing there is no excuse about is Ida attacking Ivory in DMs once he posted about me. What she said is deplorable, and I don't agree with it at all. It did come from an emotional place, but that is not an excuse.
Pyro brings up the point that the document relies on the fact that Ida would communicate to Pyro about the conversation with Ivory. All points brought up by the document aside, this is another one of these gray areas, because only Pyro and Ida would know how truly close one another were at the time of the DMs happening, that being 2 years prior to them dating. This feels like another situation that only they are privy to. Only Pyro and Ida would know exactly how intimate one another was with each other, how closely they talked, and how much they talked about other people, which leaves things a little up in the air, but otherwise, unless something else comes up, we're left to draw our own conclusions. I will say it is good to condemn Ida's behavior. That is a solid stance to take. Despite acknowledging that it came from an emotional place, Pyro does not attempt to make an excuse for the behavior, which one could say demonstrates another level of taking responsibility.
Me including the anecdotal evidence led to the belief that Ivory lied about his age. That is never a claim I have made that he has done to me. I've only said that I did not know his age at 15, which in turn has caused more people to believe that I lied in my original statement. I just want to say though, this is not an excuse. It is entirely my responsibility to verify age. But this never escalated from 2 morons talking about inhaling furry farts, and I never intended it to. Ergo, grooming. There's a message that was used of me basically having a breakdown that was put in Ivory's original post, saying pretty much how everyone's going to find out and I have to keep looking over my shoulder, like my paranoia was through the roof. And this has been twisted, of course, to make it seem that I am guilty for grooming a 15-year-old. I think it's quite obvious what, like, I'm actually worried about. I didn't want the public to find out that I was a complete degenerate and into this, like, furry roleplay shit, and yeah, anyone would be embarrassed by that. I haven't had any conversations remotely resembling this for the past 3 years. But of course, I still did, and still kind of do hate myself for it. That being said, over the last couple weeks, I've learned to embrace it, because that's all I can do now. Now, this is a good time actually to discuss a Discord conversation that was leaked, where I'm asking someone for a way to, like, mass delete Discord messages. Very obvious explanation. I was shit scared of the public finding out that I was a complete degenerate. And, you know, pretty much just being kink-shamed for all eternity. But this has now been twisted into, like, me trying to hide evidence of grooming to escape internet justice. They're trying to make it out to be far more insidious than it actually is, and it's sick. People seem to be choosing, like, what part of my statement to run with, instead of acknowledging all of it. They twist what they want to twist, misinterpret what they want to misinterpret, and then they just ignore the rest.
Pyro also addresses several of the messages that were in Ivory's original post and attempts to add context to the paranoia and worries that he felt. As for the reasoning that he gives to it, I will withhold my opinion on that. You may judge for yourself if he's being honest there, but what I will commend him on is repeatedly apologizing. I mean, this is more apologies than we get in a lot of other videos that call themselves apology videos.
I'm just, again, amazed how people read this document and just believed it at face value. The problem is I have with this drama that there is no middle ground. Originally, Ivory was labelled as a manipulative clout chaser that could do no wrong because people chose to believe my screenshots over his.
And you turned out to be what a lot of people were calling you from the start. A clout chaser trying to ruin someone's career on YouTube, let alone on the internet, for attention.
But now those same people are saying I'm guilty because they read this document and didn't bother to cross-reference it with my original statement.
Not only is there proof of Pyro knowing that Ivory was underage, but definitive proof that the messages were real, along with other damning evidence too.
And also, these are the same people that say, I shouldn't take my time with this response.
It's gone too far and too much has come out for him to take his time with it, like he did with his last response.
There needs to be a middle ground. I did fuck up. There is no excuse, and I am sorry for that. But I am not a groomer or a predator, and documents like these only try to show one side and build a narrative that I'm a liar when I have never actually changed my story from my original post. My mistake, if anything, was not being clearer. I have never tried to hide anything.
A middle ground is absolutely necessary in all situations. While I don't think that the document was entirely attempting to say that Pyro was constantly switching his story, I believe it was compiled to point out skepticism that some people had. That being said, Pyro is still right when he says that it's necessary to take a moment to breathe every now and again, to take moments to think, no matter how you believe before or after watching this video. However, what I will say, Pyro, is that if anyone was pressuring you for an immediate response, then I apologize. If my stating that you should have made a video from the start, or me in other videos constantly urging you to make a video came off as attempting to rush you, I apologize. It was always a suggestion that something should be said in video form, not that it had to happen right away. I will say that it's a good idea to ask people in certain situations to speak up about things and address them, and as long as they do it in their own time and not let it sit and fester, then I'd count that as a net positive. At least that's saying before you take into account the contents of whatever the response is. At least it's taking some form of action.
Another argument Pyrocynical made lies in the idea that Ivory messages other people of similar age around the same time. They then show a screenshot that I posted of Ivory talking about the cringer furry stuff with someone else. Ivory then posted the rest of the conversation on Twitter, and it really doesn't change the narrative much, apart from adding that he wants to be left alone. At the time, I felt it was more than fair that I show an example of Ivory having a similar conversation with someone else, and how he wasn't affected by it as he claims he was with me. He still excused the guy, there was no call-out post on him, and I think it was fair to question that, like why didn't he see a problem? Now, I understand I have a lot more reach and power, a much larger platform, but this document goes as far as to compare me to legitimate predators like Kiwis. Someone who sent and received nudes to a 14-year-old girl, lied about it ever happening, and then his excuse was, don't trust girls.
People fuck up, like teenagers are stupid, man, and I fucked up being, it was really irresponsible. I shouldn't have trusted this girl. I shouldn't have.
They also post a screenshot of Ida saying that I did this with everyone. There's this one part of the doc that claims that people make the mistake of not watching an entire video before they pass judgment. And this is like bitterly ironic. You make that claim, but you leave so much out of my original statement. It's written with like such cruel intentions, and it waits until page 16 out of 19, only then to confirm that I never actually sent or received nudes. I like as well how they just hid it in the middle of that huge paragraph.
I made sure to keep the Kiwis comparison and several other things out of my coverage originally on the document, mostly because some of the language on the document was, well, a little out there. But additionally because this is also a good point, we should not immediately draw parallels to other situations. Again, you sit back, you absorb the information, and you take it from there.
You know, the majority of the messages, they're so fucking bad to look at. This document is cowardly. I mean, like, the ending is no exception. Like, they don't even definitively state if I groomed anyone. They just leave enough room for people to draw that conclusion themselves without openly saying it. Even if this was made in good faith, it is a severe case of tunnel vision trying to right a perceived wrong. But I can't just sit here, and let my name get dragged through the mud. Now, I do want to directly say something to Ivory and apologize to him and to anyone else that I did the furry roleplay garbage with. What seemed consensual and reciprocal may very well not have been. It's not my place to decide. It happened. It was my responsibility to verify age, and I never did, and I am sorry for that. You shouldn't have been put in that situation, and it was stupid of me to message people about this furry stuff without taking into account the influence of my platform. especially considering how sexual the tone of these messages were. It wasn't until later where I decided this was an issue and decided to stop entirely. I hope you can understand the frustration in my original post, but I shouldn't have attacked you, only apologise and defended myself. Now, really good closing note here for anyone that is still confused to any degree. If your accusation is solely Pyrocynical is a complete degenerate and should have not had these conversations with someone that he didn't realise was 15, you win. I can't dispute that. But if you've either insinuated, contributed, or directly called me a paedophile who groomed someone knowing that they were 15, that is a completely false claim. I've said my piece, I've admitted fault, and apologised to the best of my ability. I just want to move on from this. I want it to end. Thank you for watching, and hopefully this gives you a more widened view on the situation.
And we do get an apology at the end that certainly, at least to me, feels genuine. It's worrying who else he might not have verified the age of during these roleplay sessions. However, at the end of the day, it is clear that Pyro feels some kind of remorse. I believe a lot of people can see that. And Pyro closes on a fairly strong note. He states that he cannot dispute what he did was wrong, and that's true. What he did was disgusting. That's not because of the fetish, it's because of the situation involving a minor. I assure this audience that through my videos, I have not tried to paint Pyro as some kind of serial pedophile of some sorts. I've always been interested in delivering as unbiased of a take as I can. But the Pyrocynical situation exists at the end of the day to be a lesson in just that, to remember to consider both sides of a story. Even if one is particularly loud in the current moment that you're hearing it, don't always jump on each accusation and assume it's true. If you're a content creator, make videos with the intent to bring things to your audience first. Add a dash of your opinion, but don't let it be the driving basis to your coverage. So where does that lie with us at the end of the day? Well, the crux of Pyro's innocence is that he didn't know the age at the time he engaged in the RP. Did he or didn't he? He says he didn't, other people say he did. At the end, that's something that only he can know at this point, it feels like. But is it good that he apologized? Yes, of course, and he did it many more times and in a much more responsible way than what most apology videos do. However, it does appear that in the past he had many chances to stop and save himself from a situation like this happening. And once again, the whole situation feels built on circumstantial evidence on both sides. But I feel like at the end of the day, that's as good as we're going to get. Unless there's a situation like this right now, unless he's doing this with people right now that we don't know about, I'm not saying that he is, but unless something like that comes forward, this looks like it will be left to the sands of time, unless something groundbreaking or earth-shattering comes about. Is Pyro innocent or guilty? Is Pyro a bad person? Doesn't necessarily appear like it, but again, that's all up for you to decide. All we know is that we got an address here. An address to add to a complicated and crazy situation, to say the least. In the end, I'd love to know what you think. Go ahead and leave it in the comments. Are you gonna still watch Pyro? If so, go right ahead. Are you gonna stop watching Pyro? If so, well, go ahead. I'm interested to see what the general response is, and who knows, maybe with this, the situation can go to bed. If you enjoyed what you heard, or the coverage, feel free to like and subscribe. Go ahead and share the video around. Whenever you're watching this, I hope you have a good rest of your day, and an even better tomorrow. I love you. Before you say it back, look in the mirror and say it to yourself. And until next time, this has been the Hotbox. Bye.
Hey, hear that? I'm a penis.